I want to understand it. I actually have.
The Judiciary Committee will come to order. Without objection, the Chair is authorized to declare recesses of the committee at any time. Before we undertake any official business, I'd like to take a moment to recognize Art Baker, who has served as a detailee from the FBI to the Crime Subcommittee for the last 2 years. Art will return to the FBI, where he has served for 25 years, most recently in the Office of Congressional Affairs at the end of this week. His contributions to the subcommittee have been invaluable. During his tenure, Art worked on a variety of hearings and legislation. These include the Patriot Act, Nuclear Treaty Implementation, the Public Safety Officers Benefit Program, and the Stolen Valor Act, just to name a few. Art, we will miss you. Thank you for your great service.
Mr. Chairman.
Would you stand up so we can recognize you? And want to also recognize the ranking member, Mr. Conyers.
Mr. Chairman, we need Art Baker and the FBI needs Art Baker. How did we lose?
Well, we won for 2 years, but Art, thank you again. With the agreement of the ranking member, we will proceed to mark up 7 bills total. And pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 6215 to amend the Trademark Act of 1946 to correct an error in the provisions relating to remedies for dilution for purposes of markup, and the clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 6215 to amend the Trademark Act of 1946 to correct an error in the provisions relating to
remedies. Without objection, the bill will be considered as read and open for amendment at any point. I'll begin by recognizing myself for an opening statement, then the ranking member. The purpose of the Federal Trademark Dilution Act of 1995 is to protect famous trademarks from subsequent uses that blur the distinctiveness of the mark or tarnish or disparage it, even in the absence of a likelihood of confusion. Dilution does not rely upon the standard test of infringement, that is, likelihood of confusion, deception, or mistake. Rather, it applies when the unauthorized use of a famous mark reduces the public's perception that the mark signifies something unique, singular, or particular. In other words, dilution can result in the loss of the mark's distinctiveness and possibly the owner's rights in it. Congress enacted amendments to the original dilution statute in 2006. Last year, 2 law professors discovered a technical problem with one of the 2006 changes. During Senate consideration of the House bill, the section that provides a federal registration defense to a dilution action was reorganized. This produced an unexpected and unintended change to the law. As originally drafted in the House, the provision was designed to encourage federal registration of trademarks. This is a worthy policy goal that prevents state laws from interfering with federally protected marks and ensures that registered marks are protected nationwide. The House version prompted this goal and barred a state action for dilution against a federally registered mark. However, the Senate reformatted the House text in such a way as to create a bar against state action for dilution, as well as a state or federal action based on a claim of actual or likely damage or harm to the distinctiveness or reputation of a mark. This means the federal registration defense is available to both state and federal dilution claims. Congress couldn't have intended such an outcome. If all dilution claims, including federal claims, are barred by registration, it becomes difficult to cancel a diluting mark that is registered. This encourages illegitimate mark holders to register diluting marks, which forces legitimate mark holders to expend greater resources to monitor registrations, as well as other marks being used in commerce. And that is why we introduced H.R. 6215 to amend the Federal Trademark Dilution Act. This bill simply reformats the affected provision to clarify that federal registration only constitutes a complete bar to a state claim based on dilution or actual or likely damage or harm to the distinctiveness or reputation of a mark. The change applies prospectively. This bill ensures that the trademark community is protected from those who look to use this loophole as a way to disparage legitimate trademarks and cost their holders time and money. So I urge my colleagues to support H.R. 6215 and recognize the ranking member, Mr. Conyers, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Smith, for a clear and simple explanation of what we're doing in correcting the error. I've found no one on this side that has any objections to this, and the restructuring the bill provided that a person with a federally registered trademark gains complete immunity from federal dilution claims. And so this corrects it. And with that, I will concur with your description, support the bill, and yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Conyers. And with that objection, we will put into the record letters of support for H.R. 6215 from the International Trademark Association, the Intellectual Property Owners Association, and the American Intellectual Property Law Association. Reporting quorum being present, the question is on reporting the bill favorably to the House. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is ordered reported favorably. Members will have 2 days to submit their views. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 6189 to eliminate unnecessary reporting requirements for unfunded programs under the Office of Justice Programs for purposes of markup, and the clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 6189, a bill to eliminate unnecessary reporting requirements for unfunded programs under the Office of Justice Programs. Section 1, short title.
Without objection, the bill will be considered as read and open for amendment at any point. Without objection, I'll put my opening statement into the record and recognize the ranking member for his opening statement, and it is also the ranking member's bill, and he has sponsored it.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. Under the Government Performance and Results Modernization Act, the Department of Justice conducts an annual review of statutory reporting requirements that are outdated, duplicative, and otherwise no longer useful to Congress. After conducting that review, the Department recommends that Congress eliminate the 2 reporting requirements as set forth in H.R. 6189. One of these mandates stem from the DNA Analysis Backlog Elimination Act, which requires the Attorney General to report to Congress on various grants made to states to perform DNA analysis. Given the fact that Congress has not appropriated any funds for these grants since 2003, this statutory reporting requirement has been obsolete for nearly a decade. Second reporting requirement is derived from the Police Corps Act enacted in 1994. The director of that Corps is required to make annual reports to Congress on the agency's progress, but no funds have been appropriated since fiscal year 2005. So we simply remove these out-of-date requirements because there's no activity for the Justice Department and the Office of Justice Programs, and that they support this activity to end duplication. I might add in closing that there are other reports that we will be coming forward with that can be easily eliminated and save time and effort as well. With that, I urge support of the measure and yield back my time.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Conyers. Reporting quorum being present, the question is on reporting the bill favorably to the House. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the bill is ordered reported favorably, and members will have 2 days to submit their views. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 4305, the Child and Elderly Missing Alert Program for purposes of markup, and the clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 4305, a bill to authorize the Attorney General to provide a grant to
Without objection, the bill is considered as read, and rather than recognize myself for an opening statement, I'll put my opening statement in the record and recognize the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Shabbat, for his opening statement, and he is the sponsor of this legislation.
I thank the chairman for yielding, and I want to thank my colleague, Mr. Deutsch, for being the principal co-sponsor of this legislation. We appreciate his leadership on this matter. Every 40 seconds, a child in this country goes missing. Throughout the United States, an average of 2,000 children under the age of 18 are reporting missing each and every day, and as many as 800,000 a year. In addition, healthcare reports show 3 out of 5 Americans living with Alzheimer's disease will wander from their current location. The need to locate missing children, and in some instances seniors, particularly with Alzheimer's, in the first hours of the disappearance is vital. Unfortunately, most law enforcement agencies lack the appropriate resources to knock on every door in the community in order to gather valuable information. Further, although the amber and silver alerts are oftentimes successful, there remains a crucial lapse of time between when a child or elderly adult is first reported missing and when one of these services can be employed. This important legislation would help rectify the problem by utilizing targeted telephone and cellular alerts within minutes of the report to residences and businesses in the area where the person was last seen. This legislation will assist federal, state, and local law enforcement agencies in the rapid recovery of missing children and elderly persons while saving taxpayer dollars. An automated alert system would be free for local law enforcement, saving thousands of dollars on a traditional search, which could require as many as 10 officers on the ground at any one time. A recent success story in my district highlights the value of a targeted telephone and cellular alert program. On February 1st, 2012, a 9-year-old little girl was reported missing from her home after she went to walk her dog and did not return. A Sergeant Beavers contacted a child is missing and provided the girl's description to be distributed via telephone alert. Nearly 1,700 alert calls were made asking that anyone with information contact the police. According to the case follow-up report, after the alert was activated, a number of phone calls were received immediately, and some contained valuable tips. These tips actually helped the police to locate the girl safely, approximately a half-mile away from her home in less than an hour after activation of the alert. This type of privately run program in partnership with local law enforcement and the public exemplifies that protection of our children is best accomplished through a local community effort. I urge my colleagues to support this bipartisan, common sense legislation, and I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Shabbat. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Conyers, the ranking member, is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman. I concur with the explanation of Steve Shabbat, and I commend him and the ranking member of that subcommittee for the work they've done. What we essentially do is facilitate in this measure the provision of targeted telephone alerts to residents and businesses in the area where the person was last seen. It is critical in these cases of missing persons that the first hours of their disappearance be acted with as much energy and efficiency as possible, especially when it involves abducted children or elderly adults. This is a bill in which all of us can come around to support, because it allows nonprofits to become involved in assisting with the search immediately after their disappearance is noted. I support the bill, and I haven't found any one on our side that has any objections. I could yield to the ranking member of the subcommittee if he wanted to.
I'm going to put his opening statement.
Okay. Oh, and I wanted to put Bobby Scott, the ranking member of Subcommittee Crime, to I ask unanimous consent to make his statement a part of the record, and I yield back my time.
Without objection, and thank you, Mr. Conyers. Does the gentleman from Ohio have a manager's amendment?
I do have a manager's amendment at the desk, the nature of substitute.
Gentleman is recognized to offer his amendment. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of substitute to H.R. 4305, offered by Mr.
Ask unanimous
Shabbat.
consent that
Without
it be
objection,
considered as
the
read.
amendment will be considered as read, but let me wait for it to be passed out if it's going to be passed out. It has been, is that at everybody's desk now? Okay, the gentleman from Ohio is recognized to explain the manager's amendment.
Yeah, I'll be very brief, Mr. Chairman. Just makes a couple of very simple corrections to improve the bill. The amendment no longer has narrow requisite qualifications such as years of existence in an organization. It would allow more organizations to be eligible to apply, and it makes a couple of technical corrections to streamline the bill, but nothing major. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Shabbat, and I support the manager's amendment as well. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Conyers.
We do on this side as well that have had a chance to study it carefully in the last 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Conyers. The question, does the gentleman from Florida wish to be recognized on this amendment?
I do, Mr.
The
Chairman.
gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to speak in support of the Child and Elderly Missing Alert Program Act, of which I'm a sponsor, as well as the manager's amendment offered by my friend Mr. Chabot of Ohio. Every 40 seconds in this country, a child goes missing. An average of 2,000 children under the age of 18 are reported missing each day in the United States, with over 800,000 children reported missing each year. In addition, 5.4 million Americans are living with Alzheimer's disease, and according to healthcare reports, 6 in 10 dementia victims and 3 out of 5 people with Alzheimer's will wander from their current location often in an effort to return home, which in many cases is no longer their place of residence. The first hours in the disappearance of missing children and seniors is vital. According to the Department of Justice, among cases involving children who were abducted and murdered, 74% were killed in the first 3 hours of their disappearance. Half of elderly adults who wander from their residences suffer serious injury or death if not found within the first 24 hours. That's why programs such as A Child is Missing, based in South Florida, play such a vital role in preventing the unthinkable and assisting federal, state, and local law enforcement in the rapid recovery and return of missing children and seniors to their families. Mr. Chairman, A Child is Missing, which will be eligible for the grant program, for the grant provided by this bill, is a nationwide nonprofit organization that is available and ready to respond to law enforcement 24 hours a day when a child or senior goes missing. When a person is reported missing to the police, law enforcement contacts A Child is Missing for help. Within minutes, the organization gathers and sends law enforcement vital information, including the geographical information of the search area, and proceeds with a geo-targeted alert at a rate of 1,000 calls per minute to the surrounding area. The calls detail the missing person's description, last known whereabouts, and pertinent information, and ask residents to be on the lookout and report back any information. As of last week, A Child is Missing was credited with its 1,158th successful recovery. Considering how important a role this group and others like it play in the recovery of children and seniors around the country, we owe it to them to provide them with the proper funding to continue their important work. And I urge my colleagues to support this manager's amendment and this bill. And I thank you, and I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Deutsch, both for your comments and for your work on this issue as well. The question is on the manager's amendment. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Opinion Chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. A reporting quorum being present, the question is on reporting the bill as amended favorably to the House. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is, as amended, is ordered reported favorably. Without objection, the bill will be reported in a single amendment in the nature of a substitute incorporating the amendment adopted, and staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes, and members will have 2 days to submit their views. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 6185, the Local Courthouse Safety Act of 2012, for purposes of markup, and the clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 6185, a bill to improve security at state and local courthouses.
Without objection, the bill will be considered as read, and rather than recognize myself, I'll recognize the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Adams, for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today, August 1st, is a significant one. 29 years ago, on August 1st, 1983, Thomas Provenzano was arrested for disorderly conduct in Orlando, Florida. From that day forward, he continued to follow and threaten to kill the officers who arrested him. I suppose you could say it became an obsession. 6 months later, on January 10th, 1984, Provenzano arrived at the Orange County Courthouse for his disorderly conduct trial, where he was heard to have said, "I can't wait until those 2 policemen walk in. I'll show them." As he entered the courthouse, Provenzano was carrying a red knapsack and wearing a jacket in which he had inside pockets sewn in. A correctional officer, Mark Parker, stopped him at the door and told him that he would have to leave the knapsack outside or have it searched. So Provenzano took his knapsack to his car. The knapsack, it was later revealed, contained a gun stock for his .45 caliber assault rifle, and ammunition for a .38 caliber revolver. Less than an hour later, Provenzano re-entered the courtroom, this time without a knapsack, but with his jacket on. He approached the bench when his case was called, and the judge instructed bailiff Harry Dalton to search Provenzano. As Provenzano reached into his jacket pocket, bailiff Dalton went to grab him. He was shot in the face. Provenzano then chased and fired at least 2 shots at Correctional Officer Parker. Bailiff William Wilkerson, the bailiff in charge of the courtroom next door, stepped into the hallway where the shooting was taking place. Shortly thereafter, gunshots were heard. Provenzano then ducked into a room and took a barricade position with a shotgun pointing into the hall. Corporal A.C. Jacobs of the Orange County Sheriff's Office shot Provenzano through a window. Provenzano had been armed with a 12-gauge shotgun, a .45 caliber assault rifle, and a .38 caliber revolver, all loaded with live ammunition. Bailiff Wilkerson, a 6-year-old veteran who retired from the Navy as a lieutenant commander, was killed by Thomas Provenzano that day. Bailiff Dalton, a 53-year-old father of 6, was left paralyzed from the shooting. He died 7 years later. Correctional Officer Mark Parker was 19 at the time of the shooting. He survived the shooting but was paralyzed from the shoulders down and had to spend the rest of his life confined to a wheelchair. Thomas Provenzano was executed by the state of Florida on June 21, 2000 by lethal injection. I introduced the Local Courthouse Safety Act because the things this bill does are important to me. I know the families of Bailiff Dalton and Bailiff Wilkerson who lost their lives as a result of the senseless violence that day in the Orange County Courthouse, and I know the grief they've had to live with all of these years. I am a friend of the Parker family and remain friends with Officer Parker until he passed about 3 years ago. Even though it's nearly 30 years later, courthouse shootings are still happening all over this country and innocent people are dying. In fact, I'm told that since September 2010, there has been about 1 shooting per month on average at local courthouses. Those who are exercising their constitutional right of seeking justice in our courtrooms should not have to fear for their safety, and neither should our law enforcement officers, judges, or court personnel. It is my hope that this bill will help to prevent horrific incidents like this from happening in local courthouses. I want to thank my colleagues on the committee for recognizing that we need to take courthouse security seriously and for joining me in this bipartisan effort to prevent violence in local courthouses across this country. It is clear we agree on the need to give sheriffs and local courthouses access to training, equipment, and resources they need to improve security. So I urge support for the bill and yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Ms. Adams, for introducing this bill to make America's courthouses safer. The gentleman from Michigan, the ranking member, is recognized for an opening statement.
Thank you. This is a good common sense bill as demonstrated by the broad range of support it enjoys, including the National Sheriff's Association, National Association for Court Management, the Conference of Chief Justices, the Conference of State Court Administrators, American Judges Association, National Court Reporters Association, and the Center for Judicial and Executive Security. I'm pleased to co-sponsor this with my colleague, Sandy Adams. It's also important that the bill expands the scope of the grants awarded by the State Justice Institute to include the improvement of the safety and security of state and local courts. Nothing can be more important than people feeling that it is safe and secure to come in seeking justice in our judiciary system. And the bill is particularly commendable because it makes use of existing resources to help state and local courthouses. It directs the General Services Administration to make available at no cost to state and local courts the security equipment needed to detect weapons such as metal detectors, wands, and baggage screening devices. I urge support for the bill, and we on this side have noticed no reasons to oppose this measure. I yield back the balance of my time, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Conyers. Reporting quorum being present, the question is on reporting the bill favorably to the House. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is ordered reported favorably. Members will have 2 days to submit their views. The sponsor of H.R. 2800 is on her way to the committee markup, so we will now go to H.R. 1775. And pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 1775, the Stolen Valor Act of 2011, for purposes of markup, and the clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 1775, a bill to amend Title 18, United States Code, to establish a criminal offense relating to fraudulent claims about military service.
Without objection, the bill will be considered as read and open for amendment at any point. And I'll recognize myself for an opening statement, then the ranking member. H.R. 1775, the Stolen Valor Act of 2011, was introduced by our colleague from Nevada, Mr. Heck. I thank him for his work on this issue to protect the integrity of military decorations. On a bombing mission over Germany in November 1944, 22-year-old Second Lieutenant William E. Metzger, Jr., found himself faced with a critical decision: stay on a seriously damaged aircraft or abandon his injured crewmates and parachute to safety. Lieutenant Metzger chose the former, the path of loyalty, courage, and patriotism. Hit with anti-aircraft fire, 3 of the plane's engines were damaged and the 4th was on fire. So was the cockpit, and the radio had been destroyed. 2 crewmates were injured, 1 unconscious. Despite all of this, the crew flew on to complete its mission. When the plane reached Allied-controlled territory, Lieutenant Metzger told the crew to parachute to safety. He, however, chose to remain with the unconscious crew member and the pilot to try to land the plane. But at an altitude of 100 feet, the plane exploded, crashed, and then disintegrated. All 3 on board, including Lieutenant Metzger, was killed. On May 16, 1945, Second Lieutenant Metzger was posthumously awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor, a symbol of his loyalty to his injured crew, his determination to accomplish his mission, and his last act of bravery. George Washington, as commander of the Continental Army, created the first honorary badges of distinction for military service. He cautioned that anyone with the insolence to assume a badge that he did not earn would be severely punished. Nearly a century ago, Congress made it a crime to wear, manufacture, or sell military decorations or medals without authorization. In 2006, Congress enacted the Stolen Valor Act in response to an escalation in the number of fraudulent claims of receipt of military decorations, particularly the Medal of Honor. In June, the Supreme Court in U.S. v. Alvarez held that the act inappropriately criminalized speech protected by the First Amendment. Simply put, a lie, even a lie about being awarded the Medal of Honor, is protected speech. The court was quick to note that, quote, in periods of war and peace alike, public recognition of valor and noble sacrifice by men and women in uniform reinforces the pride and national resolve that the military relies upon to fulfill its mission. The court also acknowledged that false claims about military decorations such as the Medal of Honor demean the high purpose of the award and may offend the true holders of the medal. This harm does not overcome the high level of scrutiny afforded protected speech. The court added, however, that, quote, where false claims are made to effect a fraud or secure monies or other valuable considerations, say offers of employment, it is well established that the government may restrict speech without affronting the First Amendment, end quote. H.R. 1775, the Stolen Valor Act of 2011, clarifies the law to prohibit false claims of receipt of the Medal of Honor and other military decorations to carry out a fraud. In a moment, our colleague, Mr. Griffin, will offer a substitute amendment to further modify the bill in response to the Alvarez decision. This legislation reaffirms Congress's respect and gratitude to the men and women of the armed forces. It continues our longstanding commitment to protect the prestige of military decorations awarded to honor the valor and sacrifice of our military heroes. And it ensures that those who seek to exploit these medals for fraudulent gain are held accountable. So again, I want to thank our colleague from Nevada, Mr. Heck, for his leadership on this issue. And without objection, the statement for the record by the sponsor of H.R. 1775, Mr. Heck, will be included in the record. I urge my colleagues to support the bill and recognize the ranking member, Mr. Conyers, for an opening statement.
Thank you. I support H.R. 1775. I've heard no criticism of it, and I think the gentleman from Arkansas's amendment, Tim Griffin's, will make it even better. It's a way to protect and honor our military medals and decorations while also respecting the First Amendment. And so with the adoption of the Griffin Amendment, I support the committee approval of this bill today. Ask unanimous consent to insert my full statement in the record and yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Conyers. The gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Griffin, is recognized to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
And the clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 1775.
Without objection, the amendment is considered as read and will be considered as base text for purposes of amendment, and the gentleman from Arkansas is recognized to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I also want to thank the ranking member for his kind words. This substitute amendment revises H.R. 1775, the Stolen Valor Act of 2011, in response to the recent Supreme Court decision in U.S. v. Alvarez. The court instructed that, however despicable, a false claim about receiving a military award is protected by the First Amendment. The court has never acknowledged false statements as a category of unprotected speech deserving of no First Amendment protection. Although the government's interest in protecting the integrity of the Medal of Honor is beyond question, the court found that, quote, there must be a direct causal link between the restriction imposed and the injury to be prevented, end quote. And degradation of the status of a military decoration or emotional harm to its true recipients is not sufficient to overcome the deference afforded to protected speech under the First Amendment. But the court goes on to point out that a false claim about a military decoration or medal would be properly prohibited when it is made in furtherance of a fraud. In his concurrence, Justice Breyer identified several modifications to create a more finely tailored law, including, number one, require knowledge of falsity. Number two, identify those medals Congress is most interested in protecting. And three, limit the statute to those lies most likely to cause harm. The substitute amendment incorporates all of these recommendations. It rewrites subsection B of section 704 to make it a crime to fraudulently hold oneself out to be a recipient of the Congressional Medal of Honor or other enumerated military decorations with the intent to obtain money, property, or other tangible benefit. The term fraudulently incorporates the necessary knowledge requirement. Black's Law Dictionary defines fraud as a knowing misrepresentation of the truth or concealment of a material fact to induce another to act to his or her injury. The amendment also adds an additional element of specific intent, namely that the fraud was committed for the purpose of obtaining money, property, or other tangible benefit. The term tangible benefit is intended to cover those valuable considerations beyond money or property, such as offers of employment, which Justice Kennedy identified as appropriately prohibited benefits to a fraud. The amendment limits the application of the one-year penalty to false claims involving the Medal of Honor in those military decorations and medals listed in the statute, such as the Navy Cross, Silver Star, and Purple Heart. As Justice Breyer noted in his concurrence, not all military awards are alike. Congress might determine that some warrant greater protection than others. During oral argument, Justice Kennedy and Justice Ginsburg challenged the statute's prohibition on the unauthorized wearing of a military medal. If one wears a military medal, even if he or she is not the recipient of such medal, is it any less expressive speech and any less protected than a false claim? Although the court does not affirmatively address this issue in its ruling, it's clear from the argument that this type of expressive conduct is very likely to enjoy First Amendment protection. The amendment therefore strikes wears from subsection A of section 704. It does so with the confidence that the act of fraudulently wearing a military medal to obtain money, property, or other tangible benefit will continue to be prohibited under the revised subsection B. Lastly, the amendment adds combat badges to the list of decorations and medals protected under the Stolen Valor Act. I wish to thank the sponsor of H.R. 1775, Representative Joe Heck from Nevada, for his leadership on this issue, as well as Chairman Smith and Ranking Member Scott and Ranking Member Conyers for their bipartisan cooperation to respond quickly to the Alvarez decision so that we can ensure that the Medal of Honor and other military awards are protected from fraud. I urge my colleagues to support the amendment, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin, and I support the amendment as well. The ranking member, Mr. Conyers, is recognized.
I support the amendment as well.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Scott, is recognized.
Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise in support of this amendment as an appropriately limited measure to constitutionally prohibit anyone from seeking money, property, or other tangible benefit by fraudulently representing that they have been awarded a U.S. military medal or decoration. Our military personnel honor us with their sacrifices and their service. Some make the ultimate sacrifice. There aren't enough words to thank them for what they do. So when a member of armed services commits a particularly heroic act or engages in dangerous course of action, we often award them with the U.S. military medal or decoration. They have earned a high honor from their commanding officers and from the American people. When someone falsely claims to have been awarded such an honor, they offend us. However, the First Amendment protects even the most offensive speech. And so in U.S. v. Alvarez, which found the original Stolen Valor Act to be constitutionally flawed, Justice Kennedy said, though few may find the respondent's statements anything but contemptible, his right to make those statements is protected by the Constitution's guarantee of freedom of speech and expression. However, Justice Kennedy gave us clear guidance on how to amend the statute while respecting the First Amendment. He said, where false claims are made to effect a fraud or secure monies or other valuable considerations, say offers of employment, it is well established that the government may restrict speech without affronting the First Amendment. The Griffin Amendment, therefore, only applies to representations which are fraudulent and made with the intent to obtain tangible benefits, which follows what the court told us to do to fix the statute. I commend my colleague for developing this amendment in consultation with the minority and for prohibiting as much of the offensive fraud that the Constitution allows us to do. I support the amendment and urge my colleagues to support it and then to approve the bill. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Scott. And the question is on the Griffin substitute amendment. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. A reporting quorum being present, the question is on reporting the bill as amended favorably to the House. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill as amended is ordered reported favorably. Without objection, the bill will be reported as a single amendment in the nature of a substitute incorporating amendments adopted, and staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes. Members will have 2 days to submit their views. We'll now go to, pursuant to notice, I now call up S-285 for the relief of Superichi Chukwiki for purposes of markup, and the clerk will report the bill.
S-285, an act for the relief of Soparuchi Chakwuki.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendment at any point. I'm going to, without objection, put my opening statement in the record and recognize the gentleman from Michigan for an opening statement.
Thank you, Chairman Smith. Last month, the committee voted to report 6 private immigration bills. I introduced one of them for relief to Bart Kumar, a promising young man from Detroit, adopted by a U.S. citizen, but because the adoption was not completed before his 16th birthday, he was not afforded the appropriate immigration status. Late last week, all 6 committee reports were filed and the bills were placed on the private calendar, and I'm hopeful that when we return from the August recess, the House will pass these bills and send them to the Senate to be passed without delay. I hope we also pass the bill we're considering today, S-285, a private immigration bill for relief of Saporichi Victor Shukwe. The italicized spelling is available for anyone that may want it. Victor is another impressive, inspirational young man who has already contributed much to Detroit, and we hope one day will contribute much to the world. Victor was born in Nigeria with a genetic disorder, neurofibromatosis, As a child, he developed large tumors that led to significant deformities. Victor's mother tried her best to get him proper medical care for this rare disease, but it wasn't available in Nigeria. He was eventually entrusted to the care of the Catholic missionary nuns of the Daughters of Mary, Mother of Mercy. And in 2001, they arranged for a plastic surgeon in Southfield, Michigan, to perform surgery on Victor at no cost. He entered the United States on a visitor's visa, has been there ever since, and has undergone 7 major surgeries to remove tumors and to reconstruct his face. Victor's story is not only about his incredible medical needs, but his story is also about his abilities. Arriving in the United States, he learned English, obtained a GED, went on to college, received a associate degree, transferred to Wayne State University for his bachelor's degree, graduated in biochemistry and chemical biology, and had a GPA of 3.82, making the dean's list, and served as commencement speaker before graduating. He's been accepted to the University of Toledo College of Medicine to fulfill his hopes of becoming a doctor and provide medical care to underserved populations. I'm proud to support the private bill initially offered by Senior Senator Carl Levin of Michigan for Victor, and I urge my colleagues to join me in support of it as well. I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and yield back my time.
Thank you, Mr. Conyers. Reporting quorum being present, the question is on reporting the bill favorably to the House. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is ordered reported favorably. And members will have 2 days to submit their views. We'll the sponsor of H.R. 2800, I understand, is on the way. We'll proceed, but then wait for her to arrive for an opening statement. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 2800 to amend the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994 to reauthorize the Missing Alzheimer's Disease Patient Alert Program for purposes of markup, and the clerk will report the bill.
H.R. 2800, a bill to amend the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendment at any point. I'm going to, without objection, put my opening statement into the record and want to thank Representative Waters for introducing this bill, and will recognize the ranking member, Mr. Conyers, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I haven't received any notice of criticism about H.R. 2800 on this side. What it does is reauthorize the Missing Alzheimer's Disease Patient Alert Program, a program that is important and provides critical services. To begin with, Alzheimer's is the most common form of dementia. It primarily consists of memory loss and impacts other intellectual abilities serious enough to interfere with daily life. Fortunately, no one in the 112th Congress suffers from any of the indicia of this disease, and so we're all in good enough shape to pass this bill without problem. According to Alzheimer's Association, the disease accounts to 50 to 80% of dementia cases. And in addition, There are a vast number of Americans affected, and the number is growing. It is estimated that 7.7 million Americans will have Alzheimer's by 2030. And finally, it addresses one of the greatest risks presented to this disease, namely that patients become disoriented and wander away from their families or homes. I want to commend the gentlelady from Los Angeles, Miss Maxine Waters, for her alertness and crafting such a measure, and I'm sure that we can all support it. And I am pleased now to yield back the balance of my time and thank the chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Conyers. I want to recognize the sponsor of the legislation, the gentlewoman from California, Ms. Waters. And if she wanted to, she could offer her manager's amendment now and then speak on both the bill and the manager's amendment.
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to thank Chairman Lamar Smith for agreeing to mark up H.R. 2800, the Missing Alzheimer's Disease Patient Alert Program Reauthorization Act. This bill reauthorizes a small but effective program that assists local law enforcement and protects vulnerable people with Alzheimer's disease. I am going to offer the manager's amendment, and I'm very pleased at the work that was done with Chairman Smith. And while we have $5 million that is authorized, what both the Senate side and everybody else could agree on is $1 million per year, which is the amount appropriated in fiscal year 2012. I appreciate the chairman's willingness to work with me and find a way to move this bill forward. Alzheimer's disease currently affects an estimated 5.3 million Americans, and that number will multiply in the coming decades as our population ages. The Alzheimer's Association estimates that 7.7 million Americans will have Alzheimer's by the year 2030, and 11 to 16 million Americans will have the disease by the year 2050. I would like to, if I may, at this time, offer the manager's amendment that I have at the desk. Is that?
Thank you, Ms. Waters, and the clerk will report the manager's amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 2800 offered by Ms.
Without objection, the
Waters.
amendment will be considered as read, and the gentlewoman from California is recognized to explain the manager's amendment.
Once again, this manager's amendment was negotiated with Chairman Smith, and I'm grateful for the support. The manager's amendment authorizes $1 million per year in appropriations for fiscal years 2013 through 2017. Even though this is a reduction from the $5 million authorization level in the underlying bill, it will allow the program to continue to operate at funding year 2012 funding level. The manager's amendment also includes language to ensure that the program will continue to be operated as a competitive grant program, and that preference will be given to national nonprofit organizations that have experience working with patients and families of patients with Alzheimer's disease and related dementias. The manager's amendment has been approved by both the Alzheimer's Association and the Alzheimer's Foundation of America. This program is extremely cost-effective, and annual appropriation of $1 million could easily result in millions more in savings for the federal government by allowing more Alzheimer's patients to remain at home with their families, thereby reducing nursing home utilization and saving Medicare and Medicaid expenses. I urge my colleagues to support the manager's amendment and the underlying bill, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you, Ms. Waters. I support the amendment and recognize the ranking member, Mr. Conyers, for his comments.
I do likewise and urge its support.
Question is on the Waters manager's amendment. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to.
Mr. Chairman,
The gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Scott, is recognized.
I see now that my statement be entered in the record at this point.
Without objection, the gentleman's statement will be made a part of the record. And the reporting quorum being present, the question is on reporting the bill as amended favorably to the House. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill as amended is ordered reported favorably. Without objection, the bill will be reported as a single amendment in the nature of a substitute incorporating amendments adopted, and staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes. Members will have 2 days to submit views, and without objection, staff is authorized to make technical conforming changes to all the bills the committee ordered reported today. That concludes our business. I thank everyone for their attendance, and we have marked up 7 bills today. 3 of them were bills that were sponsored by members of the minority, and so it's been a good day. We stand adjourned.
Thank you.